Wouldn't it be nice to have several thought leaders in your industry know and love your brand? Start a podcast. Invite your industry's thought leaders to be guests on your show, and start reaping the benefits of having a network full of industry influencers. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to the B2B Growth Show, a podcast dedicated to helping B2B executives achieve explosive growth. Whether you're looking for techniques and strategies or tools and resources, you've come to the right place. I'm Jonathan Green.
And I'm James Carberry.
Let's get into the show.
Welcome back to the B2B Growth Show. We are here today with Dan Reed. He is the head of digital content at Barclaycard. Dan, how you doing today?
Yeah, I'm very well, James. How are you?
I am fantastic. Dan, we have been, we've had this on the books for a couple months now, so I'm really excited to chat with you today. We're going to be talking about collaboration in a global organization. But before we do that, I'd love for you to set some context for our listeners and just tell us a little bit about Barclaycard and what your role is there.
Yeah, sure. So Barclaycard in the US, you'll probably be more familiar with Barclays. And Barclaycard is the credit card arm of Barclays, and I work on the B2B side of that. So in the business side, there are three main arms of Barclaycard. So it's around acquiring, being able to have people take payments, whether that be face-to-face or online. It's about making payments, so being able to have corporate cards and other cards. And it's point of sale finance as well. So if you're taking out your car shopping and you're looking to get a vehicle, then at that point in time, you might want to take out some point of sale finance. So we are part of Barclays International. So my role predominantly is UK based, but do a little bit of work in Germany and a little bit of work in the US as well.
Got it. I love it. So I want to dive into this topic because as we were talking about it offline, we talked through a couple different iterations of how we could gear this conversation, and where we ended up landing it is actually around a pretty fascinating statistic. You said that you've seen 186% increase in efficiencies by doing some of the things that you've done just to really get people around the table early on in the process around a specific initiative. Can you go a little bit deeper on that and set a little bit more context as what the rest of this conversation is going to look like?
Yeah, definitely. So that in particular is a really interesting piece. So I worked with an area of the business around our existing customer management. And what we do with those guys is we look at all the things that they want to deliver, whether it's new pieces of functionality or new ways of talking to existing customers. And historically, it was very, very linear. So the team would come up with a proposition of what they want to do. That would go through all the iterations. And finally, say 2 months into the process, it had come down to my team who managed the website. And we'd get told, hey guys, here's what you need to deliver. We need it next week. That'd be great. And we take a look at it and go, oh, actually, you need this bit of development work, or actually what you're wanting to achieve, we can do it in a different way. At that time in the process, it's kind of well, that's great, but can you just get on with it? So we looked at the whole engagement model, realized it was very linear, and the main issues were that we didn't have visibility of the workload. And so what we decided to do is change those hour-long meetings that we were having once a week to 15-minute daily stand-up meetings. So we get all the relevant people together 15 minutes in the morning every day. And it was just what's coming up in your pipeline and where are things that we're currently working on. And from there, we're able to see something that's it's going to hit us in 2 months, but we know about it and we can say, well, actually, we need to start making these kind of plans, or I need to add resource here, or I need to engage the development team to do X, Y, Z. So
you basically created essentially an agile framework around the way your content team works.
Pretty much, that's it. And we trialed it with this one area of the business to begin with. And the fundamental was let's get together and work together on a daily basis, albeit just for 15 minutes, but also let's have real clear visibility. So the other thing that we did that your listeners may be interested in is we used something called a Kanban board. And the one we used, we had a physical whiteboard in the office, but we also used a program called Trello.
Yeah, I live inside Trello.
It is so good. It is so good. I'm a bit of a techie automation geek, and I've created there's an app called If This Then That.
Yep.
So I've hooked that up to my Alexa, so I can say, "Hey Alexa, remind me to do X," and then it automatically adds a card to my Trello waitlist.
That's fantastic.
My memory's so poor, so that's how I have to manage my life, unfortunately. So we introduced Trello into the workspace, and it's just, well, as you'll know, it's so great for collaboration because at any one point you can just comment on stuff. You can see where everything is. You get automated emails to say this has been moved or this document's been added. And what we saw is we did a little test before we started this trial to see how things were going, and we sized up tasks, and we had the classic T-shirt size, small, medium, large. Our small tasks went from taking 4 weeks to deliver to 1 week to deliver.
Wow.
And our medium tasks went from 16 weeks to 11 weeks. And we didn't have any large tasks during that time. So yeah, overall, it did increase 186% in efficiencies across all the tasks that we did, which was fantastic. And as well as having those hard metrics, we also had some soft metrics around how's everyone feeling? Do people enjoy working as part of this team? Is it fun? Does it feel like a safe and secure environment? And all those scores were pretty low beforehand, especially the fun. It was like, well, a lot of our work's legal and mandatory and regulatory. There's not much fun going on there. But those scores really shifted from 2 out of 10s to 9s and 10s out of 10s.
Wow.
So it's really good to have both that hard metric, you know what, we're saving the business time and money, but also that soft metric of we're feeling more empowered as a team and working better together. So I think for anyone that's really wanting to look at improving ways of working in any size of organization, I'd say that the two key things that you can do are get together regularly, just for short periods of time, and to also use something like Trello. Jira's fine too. Any kind of Kanban board. I just like Trello because it's easy to use and looks pretty.
Yeah.
But doing those two things, I think would really see some good efficiencies.
So I've got 2 follow-up questions that I'd love to dig in with you, Dan. One, how has this approach impacted the way you and your team receive jobs from other parts of the organization? Has it shifted the way other parts of the organization give you work?
Yeah, definitely. So, and this leads on to a bit of a pet peeve of mine. So we used to receive work through what we call a briefing document, which really is just, it can be a piece of paper, an email, a PowerPoint, whatever, but here is what we want you to do. Now just go off and do it. So you're very much seen as a service delivery machine. For example, here is a product. We want you to create a page for it. Fine. But we want you to create the page, and the page needs to look like this, and this should be the user experience from someone that doesn't have that expertise. It kind of makes your team, my team morale a little bit low because they turn into kind of just glorified data entry people. But it also doesn't give the best value back to the business. A really good example of bringing this to life was a project that I worked on where we were launching 5 new credit cards, and we wanted to launch them across 6 different channels. And it was key to be able to look at the user journey and click-through rates and application rates throughout these different products and different channels. So the brief that I got was, well, we need a product page for each product, and we need 1 per channel. So can you create 30 product pages that are all duplicated? And this was to track the journey. To which I said, well, actually, if the only reason you're doing this is to be able to track the journey, we can do that through something called dynamic tracking, which I won't go into the technicalities of. But basically, Depending on where the user lands on the page from where they've come from, that will populate tracking so we can actually see where they're going.
Okay.
In short, it meant that we actually only needed 6 pages as opposed to 5 pages as opposed to 30 pages. And it actually saved us about 6 to 8 weeks in the build process, which is fantastic, right?
Yeah.
And that came from not having, in the old world, that would have been, here is your brief. Can you build 30 pages? And at which point where you may start to question it, you think, well, hang on a second, I really need to get this stuff live. Otherwise we're going to miss deadlines. Whereas being engaged earlier on, you might still get a bit of a ridiculous request, but at least you can say, well, hang on a minute, there's actually a better way to do this. And not only can we still hit your deadlines, we can hit them a lot sooner and it won't cost as much.
And so, I think the beautiful part of what you've done, you've just set an expectation with the rest of the organization that your team is not order takers, but you guys actually add a tremendous amount of value by just simply asking them to collaborate with you, because you're both trying to reach the same goal. And I think that the value you guys bring over the lifetime of the work that you guys have done and the efficiencies that you guys have figured out, you can obviously bring a lot of that to early on in the process by setting an expectation of collaboration early on. So I think that's incredibly valuable. My last question for you, Dan, I'm curious how you have structured the Trello board. I know I live and breathe in Trello. I think a lot of folks listening to this have at least heard of Trello. I don't know how many of them use it, but talk to us about how your team is actually using this tool, because I think that would be really helpful.
Sure. So we've divided up the Trello board into several columns. So the first one, we call it the wait pen. And this is, we know that a piece of work is coming in, and we've got no idea what it is, or we've a very loose idea. For example, we've got something to redesign Contact Us page to make it clearer for users to actually know which part of the business they need to speak to. We don't know what that's going to look like, but we know it's going to come in and we want to try and deliver it this year. So that goes in the wait pen. Once we then receive a brief and we kind of know what needs to be done, but we need to scope it out a little bit more, we have a next column, which is a brief received. It then gets assigned to one of the people in my team and it gets then moved to actions required. So we know we need to do something and now kind of the buck stopped with us. What happens from there is then the list is prioritized, usually just based on when it needs to be live. And then, so a user could have, say, 4 things awaiting action. They'll pick one of those things and that will then go into it's work in progress. From work in progress, it will then go into the next column, which is it's with a stakeholder for review. Once it's been reviewed, any amends have been done, we're all good. It then goes into the awaiting publish column, and then finally the best column, which is published. And that's kind of the whole process. And what I love about Trello is, when I got first introduced to it, it was, the traditional ways of work management was that your manager said, here's a load of work, let me throw it at you, just keep on throwing it. Whereas Trello is all about, actually, I am one person. I can only really do one thing at a time effectively. And I guess that's another conversation around multitasking and the myths of it. But it's more around, let me pull through work that I have capacity to do. And then we can get things moving nice and smoothly. So that's how we structure it, from waiting for something, but we know something's coming in, right through to we're actioning it, we've done it, it's been reviewed, it's now live. And just a final thought on that. Our wait pen has grown massively since starting this new way of working, which could be seen as a negative, but I see it as a real positive because it means we're being engaged much earlier in the process. I had one today, I had 7 requests come through today from one guy. And they're not, some of them are for several months into the future. And he's just saying, listen, I'm just putting this on your radar because we need to talk about it. And that's great. That's what I want.
I love it.
Yeah.
Dan, this has been fantastic. I think this is going to be incredibly helpful for the folks listening to this. If there's somebody listening, maybe they want to dig deeper on this. Maybe they're trying to figure out, how do they make their team more collaborative? How do they instill some agile methodologies in order to do that? What's the best way for them to connect with you?
Yeah, I'd say LinkedIn is probably the best way. So I don't know whether there'll be any bio or anything on this, but it is just linkedin.com/in and then /Dan Reed 86, which is REED 86. And I'm more than happy to speak to people. I write a few blogs about stuff like this and just love sharing information and helping others. So just, definitely get in touch. More than happy to.
Wonderful, Dan. Well, thank you again so much for your time. And I'm really excited to get this out to our listeners.
Cool. Thanks so much, James. Pleasure speaking with you.
To ensure that you never miss an episode of the B2B Growth Show, subscribe to the show on iTunes or your favorite podcast player. This guarantees that every episode will get delivered directly to your device.
If you or someone you know would be an incredible guest for the B2B Growth Show, email me at jonathan@sweetfishmedia.com and let us know. We love connecting with B2B executives, and we love sharing their wisdom and perspective with our audience.
Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.